Cobalion is the new raid boss in Pokemon Go. If you want to know how to best beat it down, maybe touch up your team a little bit, well then you came to the right place. And if you want to get a little extra hardcore, maybe do the duo, I can give you some details on that. And if you're curious about Cobalion's use in the meta, well, yeah, this video also talks about that, although there really isn't too much to talk about. Let's get into it. So here I have a graph of the counters to the Cobalion Raid. This is using level 40 counters, unless stated otherwise, against a tier 5 Cobalion Raid using Zen Headbutt with all of its charge moves averaged. No dodging with best friendship. For those of you that aren't familiar with the swag graphs, the x-axis here is the Pokemon's total damage output, which is effectively a better reference for tankiness. And the y-axis here is their damage per second, their DPS, which is how quickly you can deal damage. So at the end of the day, the more up and to the right you are, the better the Pokemon's going to be at beating down Cobalion. And if you're curious about the other numbers on the graphs, like little bullet points, those are break points for the most part. Unless they have an asterisk, then it's a bulk point. If you don't know about breakpoints and bulk points, link in the description to guides on that and breakpoint and bulk point calculators if you're curious about your own personal Pokemon's spread. Getting into the counters, best counter overall is Chandelure. Now, if you're not blessed enough to have a whole bunch of Chandelures powered up already, Machamp, Blaziken, Moltres, Breloom, all very good options. And if you don't have all these guys powered up and ready to go, you're kind of like on the fritz. Maybe you're like me. Well, Hariyama and Flareon and Entei also all make really good options as well. So even though Chandelure is the best overall Pokemon for this raid, another thing that you should be aware of is the weather. Yeah, so clear weather and cloudy weather are both very common weather types in Pokemon Go. And if it's clear outside, well, going with your fire type Pokemon will be better than going with your fighting type Pokemon. And if it's cloudy outside, well, then going with your fighting types is going to be better than going with your fire types. That leaves a bit of a question for the Blaziken here. So the Blaziken I have featured is using Counter with Blast Burn, which is Blaziken's overall best moveset. But if you are playing by the weather, well then going with Focus Blast in cloudy weather would be a better idea, and going with Fire Spin in clear weather will also be a better idea. Now, while those are the optimal ways to play Blaziken, if you really don't care and you're not trying to strive for like the duo or something like that, then just sticking with Counter and Blast Burn will be just fine. At the end of the day, Counter with Blast Burn in clear weather is like basically as good, just a step below the Fire Spin set, and then going with Counter and Blast Burn in cloudy weather is just a step below the Focus Blast set, but not too far below. Focus Blast is kind of just that bad, and then in the case of Fire Spin, Counter is just that good. So don't worry too much on the Blaziken. Alternatively, if you already have like a full team of Machamps ramped up and ready to go, well then you'd only use the Blazikens for the fire side of the force, and then you'd want to go with the Fire Spin. At the end of the day, don't worry about Blaziken too much. One interesting thing to note, looking a little bit closely at the graph here, is how Groudon beats out Garchomp as a ground type attacker, same moveset, where Garchomp is kind of heralded to be as good, if not slightly better, than the Groudon. Well, what's going on here is Groudon has a slightly higher attack stat, and because it has a slightly higher attack stat, it's able to hit a breakpoint that Garchomp cannot reach. However, in clear weather, which also boosts ground type damage, Groudon does meet the same breakpoint that Groudon does. I don't know if I said Groudon twice there, but then they're both on the same level once again. If you're trying to flex with Garchomp, then just flex away. Definitely not a bad option. Now, if you're more familiar with the swag graphs here, usually I have like the duo line and the trio line, and I've got Relobby Avoid TDO lines on here, which is some pretty complicated stuff. Well, the Relobby Avoid TDO is out of bounds for my graph, and the double Relobby Avoid TDO is also out of bounds for my graph, so does not apply. And as far as the trio goes, trio DPS starts at like 17, and this graph starts at 18. So everything featured here is viable for a trio. And as far as the duo goes, the starting DPS in theory is 25. It usually ends up being like 26.5, which is definitely above the ceiling of this graph, which is at 24. So everything featured here, if you got it, will clear this raid just fine. See the level 25.5 Machamps, really low level Machamps, good enough to do a trio. So I know that there's going to be groups out there of like 5-6 people that won't be able to complete it. And just let them know that even low level Machamps, as so long as they have Counter and Dynamic Punch, will do well in this raid. IVs, Hundo, does not matter. Just have any old low-level Machamp, and it definitely will serve us a lot better than your maxed out Hundo Lugia will or your maxed out Hundo Aggron. This is Machamp City, man. It's not hard. If you like some variety, Blaziken. Blaziken's cool. You guys like Blaziken. Like level 30 Blaziken. Very good option for this raid. Yeah, even Ariam and Flareon. So yeah, definitely not a complicated raid to beat. What is a little complicated is if you are trying to get the duo in, though. As far as the duo goes, I have seen some simulations that show the Machamp in the cloudy weather being able to pull it off. However, it does involve some fast relobbying, and you have to have basically perfect Machamps, or you might mess it up. In clear weather, it's a bit easier, but you will need a bunch of Chandelures to more comfortably pull it off. And then even then, it's like most achievable against close combat for obvious reasons. It's Ghost. And it's not too hard for Chandelure to live through those. But there is a handy duo guide on GamePress, so link in the description to that if you want some more duo details. Another cool thing that's on GamePress is I've got this breakpoint chart, and this time around I decided to put in a little bit extra effort with the bulk point side of it and just kind of feature what moveset the bulk points are relevant for. So if you are somebody that's into thrifting and not maxing out your Pokemon all the way, then this might be something you might want to look at. Now, as far as Cobalion goes in the meta, it's got a pretty rough time, right? Yeah, so starting out for the raid side of the meta, we got a 192 attack stat. Even if Cobalion had a better moveset than Metal Claw and Zen Headbutt as fast moves, chances are Cobalion, even with a signature move like Sacred Sword, and Sacred Sword had busted stats, yeah, chances are nothing really cool is going to be happening for Cobalion in the raid scene. So no worries to max it out there. Then as far as the PvP meta goes, well, Cobalion has to compete as a Steel type against our new overlord, Registeel. If you don't know about Registeel got Lock-On. Lock-On's crazy in PvP. Later in the week I will have a Lock-On analysis up, so if you are curious about that, subscribe to the Swagman and check it out. With something crazy like Registeel roaming around, Cobalion would need a lot to be able to stand out as a Steel type Pokemon. And to start out the gate, we've got Zen Headbutt and Metal Claw. So already not happening no matter what. And then the charge moves, close combat, Iron Head, Stone Edge, like maybe Iron Head. Iron Head's not too bad, but yeah, PvP wise, Cobalion would need a lot of changes to be viable. One thing that could help out a lot is Sacred Sword. If it has a low energy cost in PvP and it does some sort of insano damage, that could be a route for Cobalion to become really good in the meta. But unfortunately for Cobalion, it's got really bad fast moves to work with. So it'll need a new fast move and a new charge move to even be able to begin to stand out. And even then, it would have to be enough for it to overcome Registeel, to outdo Registeel as a Steel type Pokemon. I don't see it happening right now for Cobalion. Maybe sometime in the future. You know, don't sleep on all those Cobalion candies you're going to be getting this month around. And there you have it. It's Cobalion. To recap, beating it down pretty easy. Just use fire and fighting type Pokemon and pay attention to the weather. Even though these Pokemon do have some moves that they're more vulnerable to, I'd say the weather kind of wins out overall. Now, as far as Cobalion's use in the meta goes, yeah, it's just kind of a punching bag. It's our rare candy TM vending machine for the month. So don't go too crazy on this thing. I don't think it's going to spice up anytime soon. If you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. And if you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. SwagTips. One interesting thing to note going through the graph here is how Garchomp, blah blah.